equity. That's the Nothing Personal Word of the Day. It is Wednesday, August 6th, 2025, and we're talking equity because who doesn't want equity in something, anything? And equity is what the NFL got in ESPN. After all of the talk of what's ESPN worth, will ESPN sell? If so, who would be a buyer? Did any of us see it coming? Certainly not in baseball, where the NFL has done a deal in order to purchase 10% of ESPN. And in return, ESPN is getting media assets of the NFL. Media assets that were grown by the NFL, similarly to what baseball did, what the NBA did, what the NHL did, starting a network, starting a channel, doing some backroom technology, trying to add value to your franchises in order to package, get alternatives to games. NFL Network has games the way MLB Network did. The possibility of playoff games as competition to the bidders for your media rights, with the ultimate goal of monetizing it. And the NFL, as usual, has punished its competitors in the NBA and Major League Baseball by basically, now you're going to read a lot about this today, so I want to give it to you in ways that you can digest and sort of think about how does this impact you and what happened. Well, the NFL has something called NFL Network. NFL Network has a bunch of things on it. They've got games, let's say 7 games per year. They have the possibility of some international games, which they had. They've got assets like Red Zone. That's when you go around and you get what's hugning at the end of every game, at the end of every drive, when there's something exciting going on. It's like MLB Whip Around, except it's NFL Red Zone, a hugely valuable property. And they went to ESPN and said, you need something. That's how this deal was born. You need the possibility of having inventory. You need the possibility of having something to provide to your consumers because your big bet, Disney, ESPN, is this new DTC, this new $29.99 per month ESPN digital property that has to be programmed. There has to be things going on that you would feel the need to spend an extra $30 per month. Give that money to ESPN/Disney as a way to drive Disney stock. Reminder, ESPN is not a publicly traded company. Disney is. Reminder, Disney owns what used to be 80% of ESPN, and then Hearst Companies owned the balance. When NFL approached ESPN, Disney, Jimmy Pitaro, Bob Iger, and had the concept of a deal like this, which is the same thing that MLB did when they sold BAMTech, the backroom tech company that Bob Bowman and others had built. When they sold it to John Skipper and ESPN and Disney, you approach them and you talk about what would be the consideration here. And you talk money. There's cash and there's equity. Cash is when you buy something from someone and you give them cash. Equity is when you buy something from someone, but instead of giving them cash, you give them shares of stock in something, shares in a public company. What an unbelievable power move by the NFL to take an equity position in ESPN and therefore in Disney. Meanwhile, what the NFL has done is actually increased their game inventory, which they will be able to monetize separately, maybe to ESPN or to NBC or to Netflix or to Apple or to any bidder for games. Because they owned NFL Network. NFL Network had 7 games. But the only number of games that got given to ESPN as part of giving them NFL Network was 3. That means they kept 4 extra games. Bloomberg went through this and the marketplace was not focused properly, that by not only getting a 10% stake in ESPN, but also increasing your inventory makes it where you get equity and you get cash. It's the ding, ding, ding at a carnival game when you're able to do both things at once. Now, when you get equity in something, that means there had to have been a valuation in that thing you're getting. And we've always speculated, what would ESPN be worth on its own? What would a buyer have to pay in order to get all of ESPN? When you get 10% of something, you don't get an answer. And what we're putting on the screen on Nothing Personal with David Samson is that there was a valuation placed of $2.5 to $3 billion for the 10% stake, meaning that ESPN was worth 25 to 30 billion. But when you're taking only a percentage of a company, it's like when a limited partner comes in to a WNBA team or an MLB team or an NFL team, and you read, well, this limited partner came in at a $10 billion valuation. That valuation is a number that, frankly, you can make up. You can assign a value to an asset and then work backwards with what you are paying in value to get that percentage. How much is NFL Network worth? How much is NFL Red Zone worth? When you're doing an asset purchase, which is what ESPN did, they are purchasing assets. You can assign any value you want, assuming it wasn't a publicly traded company where the value is actually according to what the share price is. When you're doing an asset purchase of a baseball team, who's to say the Marlins are worth 1.2 or the Red Sox or the Rays are worth 1.7? Frankly, who's to say the Lakers were worth 10? It's a number that you use when someone agrees to buy an asset, and then that's the consideration given back. It's not tied to a share price. In this case, unless and until we see the details of the agreement, meaning what are the number of shares that the NFL is getting, because that's how you get 10%. It's not like getting 10% of a private company. They're getting 10% of the entity ESPN, which is a percentage of Disney. There's going to be shares that will be given, and we will find out what those valuations will be at some point. The reason why this deal will get this much attention is that Roger Goodell and the NFL have further widened the gap between themselves and the other sports leagues by making such a huge deal like this. And Robert Kraft, the head of the media committee, Robert Kraft, obviously you know him as the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft said something interesting about this deal. He said, I think we've hooked up with the best partners we can have. That will help expose us to more homes, more of an international audience, because strategically, we have to grow our salary cap and can only do that by, if we want to keep labor peace, we have to grow our audience. And this transaction helps us do that. In a salary cap league like the NFL, it has nothing to do with valuations, as we've talked about on Nothing Personal. The size of the salary cap is directly correlated to league revenue. It's not about what a team is worth, what a team has been bought for. The salary cap will not go up in lockstep to valuations. As we said on the sporting class, if you want that, bargain for it. What exists now is the cap and revenue. And what the owners want to show the players is we've got an equal stake in growing revenue. Because if we raise $1 of revenue, we're happy to give you 50 cents as part of the salary cap, but we will grow our revenue by 50 cents, and then our teams will be worth a multiple of that revenue. So think about the amazing, beautiful math here. If you have an extra $1 of revenue and you give 50 cents away to the players, but your team is then worth $2 more, in addition to you having 50 cents of current day money, who would you rather be? It's why teams and why leagues are all motivated to grow their revenue. Because as much as you share with your employees, the players, you are always keeping a larger share of it for yourself, thereby increasing the value of your underlying asset, or in a public company circumstance, you are increasing your share price. Simply brilliant. There are a few caveats to this deal. This deal requires federal regulatory approval. It sounds scary, doesn't it? Because it should bring you back to some of the other deals like CBS and Skydance, Paramount, remember, where there was the question about a lawsuit, a settlement, then an approval, how messy approvals can be given the state of the government currently and where the president is in terms of liking to get involved in places that generally you wouldn't get involved. Well, it turns out that this entire deal, not only is it not fully papered, but also it requires this approval that if it doesn't get, the deal just disappears. So, we can't celebrate the completion of the deal. We can't listen to Roger Goodell tell me, specifically through an article that Mike Florio did on Pro Football Talk from a book that is coming out, where Roger Goodell said, hey, forget MLB, forget NBA. Our competitors are Apple and Google. That gave me a little angina, just hearing that, because I always viewed our competitors as the NBA and the NFL. And back a quarter century ago, the difference between valuations of franchises between the leagues was not nearly as big as it is now. So when you hear your competitors say to you, by the way, you're not even a competitor of mine anymore, that hurts. And for Roger Goodell to say to his owners privately, which that's where this quote comes from after the Super Bowl in Vegas, if you look at the article that Mike Florio did from the book that Ken Belson did, yada, yada, what Roger Goodell is saying is a truth. We're not looking to compete with Major League Baseball anymore. We're looking to compete with huge $300 billion annual revenue companies, not the $12 billion annual revenue companies. We're looking to be business to business, business to consumer. We're looking to have media assets, the whole package. Meanwhile, ESPN has work to do. They've got work to do to get this deal approved. But above that, from a fan perspective, they've got work to do to earn your $30. What are they going to have on their new DTC, direct-to-consumer app that you're going to download and stream and watch stuff on? What do they need to have that will say to you, that's a good value proposition? I like the idea of spending $30 a month or $360 a year just for this. What do I get? Well, ESPN is going to have a new digital red zone. Part of the deal with the NFL, should it go through, is they'll have the ability where if you're on your app, the $30 one, you won't need any other way to get red zone. You can get it that way. It'll be a digital red zone. But they're doing more. They're trying to get more content, which is why when you own content, you are in great shape, NFL. What content would they be looking for? Well, they're negotiating with Major League Baseball after that deal fell apart, because you can bet your sweet bipsters that the DTC for $30 a month, when there's no other games going on, they got to find content. Will they get baseball games? Will they get baseball highlights? What deal will they cut between Jimmy Pitaro and Noah Garden of MLB that will keep ESPN's DTC in the game? But they're not stopping there. They need more. They need to give you, the fan, more of a reason. Just today, and it's only right now if you're live on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel, it's about 7:15. That's it, in the morning. If you're on DraftKings Network, thank you, it's 8:15. If you're listening to this, it could be any time, and we're thankful for you downloading and telling your friends what we're doing here. But this morning, live, there was an announcement made by Alex Sherman, CNBC, that WWE and its major live events, WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, starting in 2026, if you want to find those, don't look at NBC, look at ESPN. You see, NBC used to have a deal with the WWE. It was a 5-year deal for $180 million per year to show these live events. ESPN stepped up and said, you know what? Forget 180. How do you feel about $325 million a year, or $1.5 billion over 5 years? And WWE said, hey, NBC, thank you so much. We appreciate the relationship. See ya. And they're now going over to ESPN. Why would ESPN feel that it was necessary to double the value of these live event assets? Well, because you're paying attention, you've answered that question. And the reason is they need programming. Think about why it would be interesting to the WWE or to the NFL to actually want to take part in these sort of transactions. Why does the NFL and the WWE want to be associated with ESPN? You heard what Kraft said. We're looking to build audience. Well, think about what the head of the WWE said. This is our destiny, being on ESPN. If you want to expand the audience, our fan base, the fervor around WWE, and grow on a real significant national scale, you can't do it as it relates to the sports world without partnering with ESPN. Think about the power of that statement. Think about the synergy of ESPN taking over all of these deals, all of these sports, all of this content. Now think about why it makes sense that ESPN employs Pat McAfee, who gets to go around and he does WWE stuff. He does college game day stuff. He will end up doing NFL stuff. You just wait. Stephen A. Smith, same thing. This is where you have synergy. It's where you get a relationship with your audience where they are comforted knowing whether they say they're sick of the voice or not, whether they don't watch the sport or not. It's the ability to say, I know that when I want to watch something, I'm going to be watching on an ESPN platform. If I have to pay $29.99 to watch it, it makes sense for me to do it because of all of the programming I'm getting. It's all about the value proposition because guess who's paying for all of these things? You, the fan. Because the thought is that you can't live without it. Is it true? We're going to find out. But it certainly seems true given the way we all act as fans that we can't live without our live events. So ESPN gets WWE. ESPN gets NFL and assets of NFL. It's a huge day for Disney, for ESPN, for the NFL, for WWE. Meanwhile, every dog will have its day. Baseball will have its day to announce its new TV deal. NBA got its day when it announced its huge broadcast deals. But the funniest part about the end of this is think about what the NFL has in its immediate future. Not only do they get to go to market with 4 new games out of nowhere, where each game, Netflix paid like $70 million per game. So it's possible that you're looking at another $200 to $250 million for 4 games. Forget the WWE and what they have to do per year to get 325. They're no NFL. But the NFL is out marketing 4 games. And then in a few short years, the NFL has its broadcast agreements that are all up, and the NFL could opt out of a deal with its own equity partner, ESPN, and take the games to another network? That's not going to happen. You know very well the NFL is going to have to re-up with ESPN because they are now partners. It would be in the NFL's best interest to make sure that ESPN keeps the games. But will ESPN get a different rate for the games when there is a new media deal? Would the NFL charge ESPN for its slate of games? Let's say they keep and have 25 games. would the annual rate per game be different than what they charge Netflix or Apple, where they don't have an equity stake? That's how business works. Business also works. Do you think that ESPN is going to spend hours of programming each day criticizing the NFL, bringing Jerry Jones to task? Do you think that there's a possibility that the NFL will do anything? 4869, Coca, thank you. Do you think there's a possibility that ESPN will do anything to upset its partner, the NFL? And you talk about a conflict of interest. Why do you think Bob Iger had to talk about it yesterday? And he did. Listen to this statement by the CEO of Disney and realize what horse hockey it is. Bob Iger maintained nothing in this deal in any way changes ESPN's approach when it comes to journalism. If you're Don Van Natta and you have written articles in the past critical of the NFL, if you have glommed on to Pablo Torre Finds Out and you have done investigating where the NFL looks like that it's done some, shall we say, nefarious things, you think that they're re-upping his contract? And I really don't want to stop someone from earning a living. But if you're Don, you don't think that you're looking around and saying, there used to be a relationship that concerned me, but at least it wasn't in writing. Now there's a relationship that is solidified, pending regulatory approval, obviously, but a relationship that exists in a way that there's no way that I've got freedom of the press. And that is obviously a word of art that wouldn't apply here, but there is no way that I will have the ability to do the investigative work that I do. You think that when MLB negotiates with ESPN that it's not a factor that NFL will get more minutes on whatever it is, Sports Center, ancillary programming. ESPN and the NFL are now married officially in a way they never were before. That will bleed from coverage to the type of coverage, to the tone of coverage, to the amount of coverage. All of that is going to be part and parcel to a deal when you've got the NFL and ESPN getting together. Which means, if it were another industry, the government has stopped deals that smell like this before. Because the government can say, well, that doesn't seem good for the consumer. That doesn't seem fair. That seems like it could violate antitrust. And they would be right. Do they have the guts to stop this agreement? Do they have the pettiness to stop this agreement? It's one of the great business. This will be one of the great business wait-to-sees that we've seen in sports in the last quarter century at least. What will happen with this transaction? You know what I could use, Coca, on this Wednesday morning? I could use some smelling salts, I'll tell you that. I need a little more oxygen to the brain. I need a little ammonia. The NFL has decided that's it. They've seen enough to know they've seen too much. You know what the smelling salts are. You've seen boxers use it. You've seen NFL players use it. You've seen every type of athlete use it. It's the thing when you're knocked out, when you're knocked down, when you're seeing stars, and then you smell this ammonia compound, and all of a sudden it gives you this jolt, and then you snap into attention, you hear the bell, and you go out and fight another round, or you snap to attention, you get the Toradol shot in there, and you go out there for the next 1st and 10. It turns out the NFL said, we don't think that's really quite healthy for our players. And we really would not like any lawsuits going forward. We don't want any exposure of any kind with anyone who's playing with any sort of substance that in any way could mask a concussion, could mask an injury. Therefore, we're just going to ban it. Their whole point was that what smelling salts do is they mask signs of concussions, and they may not be safe because they could hurt your lungs. Believe you me, this is not a today epiphany. We knew exactly what our players were using when they were using it, and we're talking about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There is no one who watched 70s and 80s football, or 80s and 90s boxing, or 2000 and 2010s college football. There's no one who doesn't realize the correlation between smelling salts and, wow, that doesn't seem like a good idea. I have to give the NFL credit for banning smelling salts, but I also have to believe that teams right now are trying to come up with what they are going to give to their players, because all of a sudden they're making it really hard for players to get hit hard, which they all do in the NFL, and then come back and play another series or another down. I have no idea what alternative they will come up with, but they're thinking around and sitting around and thinking about it now. About a year ago, the FDA, they issued a warning and said, hey, no one should be doing these ammonia inhalants. They're just bad. It's like as kids when we sat around inhaling magic markers, or as kids when we would do from a balloon, a helium balloon, and make sure your voice was all squeaky like that. None of that is really particularly good for you. I don't know, Coke, if you ever did whippets. Remember those? And I don't mean the Devo song. You're not doing it thinking, oh, this sort of makes sense. The reason why in sports we are doing things like Toradol and like smelling salts is that we're simply trying to reflect the reality that what we ask of these players, it's not normal. The good news is we don't give it to players we never did who didn't ask for it. And you may think that if you need a smelling salt, you don't have the ability to ask for it. And I would tell you that we do it in advance. We will have conversations. It's sort of like a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate. You have that conversation before you're unconscious. I don't know if we're all talking about the same thing, but I hope you're thinking about this. A living will is what you do when you decide what you want done to you if you don't have the ability to advocate for yourself. It's a document. Find it on the internet. You should all have one. It is a document that basically is a roadmap for caregivers with what to do in situations that, God willing, will never come up, but generally and often do, just not with everyone, although at the end it comes up with everyone. So the answer is, Coca, it actually comes up with every single person at some point in time. So the reason why you go over this is that you want to make sure players, you don't like give a player a Toradol shot before they go out and pitch without them saying they want that. And we've got our medical people there, and they're approving it, and I'm not impugning the medical profession. It's not that they don't realize, hey, it's not smart of you to cover up this ankle injury, but hey, go get him. It's not smart of you to go pitch with the bone chip in your elbow, but hey, go get him. It's not smart of you to go back in when you got hit in the head, but hey, go. All right, we'll switch the concussion one. We'll make it so we won't let anyone play with concussions. The reason why it interests me so much that the NFL banned the smelling salts is now that they are in numbers that are just in a different stratosphere. You're talking about protecting a business that is worth so many billions of dollars, an industry that is so huge that you're going to see that they will have to become more and more conservative. They will have to become more conservative about the play on the field. They'll have to become more conservative about the things that they do and that they say. They will become more beholden to government. They'll become more beholden to things that would tell you, wow, this is not how they built it. And I remind you, when it comes to teams, you very often hire a coach to help rebuild and then a new coach to get you over the hump to win. In business, you have to have a different approach when you are a startup company than when you are fully established. You have different levels of accountants and attorneys and staff and salespeople and marketing people. It is a different world. The NFL is now in a completely different world, and you're going to see them acting differently as time passes here. You watch and mark my words. Let's go to review, please, Coca. No matter what, no matter how many hours of show I'm doing, thank you for being here for Nothing Personal every day live, 7 a.m. We appreciate it. We had a record month in July, and we hope to have a record month in August. We will keep going. Still going to have time to watch a movie. Yes, all makeup does is cover up a little under the eye bags. I watched Captain America Brave New World. I don't know if I'm late to the party, Coca. And I don't know if I can do anything to help anybody, but I want to try. And I love Harrison Ford. God, do I love it. But geez, did he mail it in. Anthony Mackie, you had me at hello. But my God, it was terrible. 5.6 on IMDb. I would give it one of those 3.2s at best. I suffered through it, though. I didn't stop. It's not like War of the Worlds that I'm not going to start. That's a through line to Le Batard yesterday. But if I were you, Captain America, Brave New World, pass. If I were you with Marvel, I'd say, please, can we just get back to what we used to do that was so compelling? Because there was not one scene in Captain America, Brave New World where I'm thinking, wow, I am loving watching this. Not one. As opposed to the movie I'm going to review tomorrow, called Up in the Air with George Clooney and Anna Kendrick, where there's not one scene that I don't love. We'll review Up in the Air as part of our top 100 tomorrow on Nothing Personal. Mad respect to players like Adrian Beltre. Love you, man. When you're going to be a free agent and you have an unbelievable career year going into your free agency, tip of the cap. You deserve to get paid. You're a Hall of Famer. Kyle Schwarber, current player. He's doing it right before your very eyes. While the Philadelphia Phillies have gotten some breathing room between them and the Mets as they continue a second part of the season surge to try to win the NL East, they've got a situation with Kyle Schwarber that's got Philadelphia Phillies fans sweating in sort of an uproar of stink that is deodorant requiring, because there's a concern that John Middleton, the owner of the Phillies, the king of course I'll spend stupid money. Of course I'd like to give more money to Bryce Harper because that's how good he is. Forget the fact that he's under contract. There is panic right now that there is the possibility that Dave Dombrowski will look at Kyle Schwarber at 32 years old, who is in the last year of a 4-year, $79 million deal, and say, I cannot give you the type of raise that you think you're getting. I just cannot in good conscience take a look at you and say you are a $30 million player through your age 37 season. And you think that's not what Kyle Schwarber wants? He's got 40 home runs and 99 runs batted in this year. His average is the second highest it's been in his career. So he's hitting for power. He's driving in runs. He's hitting for average. His OPS is the best it's ever been. What is it that you think that Kyle Schwarber deserves in this market? Do you want to look at Juan Soto? Juan Soto was in his 20s. Nope, Schwarber's going to be playing at 33. What about Aaron Judge? Aaron Judge, we call him the best right-handed hitter maybe we've ever seen. Injuries, no injuries, forget. Hitting 50, 60 home runs, however often he hits them. Is he worth that? Well, let's say no. Vladimir Guerrero, he was a free agent to be and got an extension with the Blue Jays. Is Kyle Schwarber worth that? A 5 handle? What is realistic for Kyle Schwarber if you are his agent and you are negotiating with the Philadelphia Phillies coming off this career year where the Phillies have to know, but as front offices we always forget, if a guy comes off a year that is like 2 standard deviations away from what he does, though what he does is darn good, but the platform year, the free agent year is so ridiculous, would everyone agree that the odds of the player doing that again are close to 0? Would everyone agree that the reality would be that he will at best be what he's been? Not what he was this year, but the true reality is that as you get older, your skills will diminish and you will not be able to perform at your standard level. Forget at your highest level. So does Dave Dombrowski go into a negotiation with Schwarber and say, yeah, we'll look at $40 million a year for 4 years, give you $160 million for 4 years, and Schwarber's saying 4 years, that only gets me to age 36. Forget it. I want 7 years. Get me to age 39. That's reasonable. Everyone else does it. And I don't want 40 a year. If you're giving me 7 years, no problem. I'll take 39. You can bet that Kyle Schwarber is going to ask for close to $300 million in free agency. Is there a chance that sanity will prevail? Is there a chance that the Philadelphia Phillies will look at Schwarber and say, hold on, we're going to give. Boy, are we going to give, but we can't give like that. I have a thought, and my thought is that the Phillies are going to give. They are going to feel the pressure to keep the band together. They've got a free agent that they could let walk with our former catcher, JT. The reality is that at that age, while the Phillies may be saying the Astros only had to give Altuve $125 million at 33. The Dodgers had to give Freeman $162. Matt Chapman, the young guy, remember him? He only got $151. Even Springer, he only got $150. Why is it that Schwarber would get double that? Is it because of his production this year, which clearly is close to double the production of these other guys? Schwarber falls in line with these players, not so far out of sync with them. So I'm going to do an official wait to see. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, fine. But the official wait to see, Coca, is that Schwarber will re-sign with the Phillies, but the number will not start with a 3. Schwarber back to the Phillies, well below 300. You wait to see. Meanwhile, congratulations, Kyle. Not too shabby. Tell you what is shabby. Devin Williams is shabby. Is shabby the word, Coco? What's the word when you have scruffy? Devin Williams is both scruffy and shabby. As a reminder, Devin Williams is the Milwaukee Brewer, the airbender, the guy with the changeup that knocks you to your knees, who was traded from the Brewers to the Yankees, got to the Yankees and said, dude, let me have a beard. And the Yankees said, we haven't had that rule in forever, but let's change it because you probably are going to be the best closer in the game because that's how good you've been, and why wouldn't we expect you to be that again? Go ahead, grow the beard. To which Giancarlo Stanton looked up and said, seriously? Seriously? Come on, Dave. And then Devin Williams comes, and he has been absolutely horrific. Last night, the Yankees were trying to break a 4-game losing streak. They had gotten swept by the Marlins. They lost the first game to the Rangers. Remember, those games count as 2 because they're in the wild card race with the Rangers chasing the Yankees. Well, Devin Williams had an opportunity in a scoreless game last night to keep the game scoreless in the 8th. And Rowdy Tellez had one of those at-bats that you dream about. Foul ball, great eye, good eye, way to go. Foul ball, great eye, way to go. Changeup, fastball. Oh my God, he sat on the changeup. He was able to get the changeup just in the air over second base for a base hit with the bases loaded. Hell yeah. That's called a major league at-bat. Do you just tip your cap to Rowdy and say, way to go? Or do you say, God, Devin Williams, there's something wrong. He's not getting any swings and misses the way he used to. And then you realize that it's true. And now you've got a situation with the Yankees where they are in straight panic. Even before the game, not only they brought Aaron Judge back and they DH'd him, so they put Giancarlo Stanton on the bench, but also they sent down one of their trade deadline acquisitions that had gotten rocked in the games appearing for the Yankees since the deadline, where the Yankees are winless, by the way. They acquired Jake Bird from the Rockies and now have sent him to the minors, having given up 6 runs in his 3 appearances. What do you think is the first bit of information that comes out about Jake Bird? I mean, it's almost too good to be true. Reports are now coming out that scouts had been very down on Jake Bird, that there had been a concern that Jake Bird had been overused by the Rockies and that he was out of gas, and that scouts did not want the Yankees to acquire Jake Bird, but that Brian Cashman and the Yankees acquired him anyway. One of my favorite things when the trade deadline acquisition implodes is how CYA becomes the most popular initials since the advent of SOS. Why would scouts want it out there that they wanted separation from a trade deadline acquisition that didn't work? Wait till Bednar and Doval start giving up more runs, and then there's more reports, hey, listen, we knew that, Bednar, he doesn't forget pitching well at Marlins Park. That was a funny one when he gave up runs there. It turns out he doesn't pitch well on a mound made of dirt when somebody's wearing pinstripes instead of a solid-colored uniform. Or in San Francisco, there was a requirement for wind and for kayaks in order for good, and we told them, but it turns out they totally ignored it. I am telling you, this is going to happen. What do you think the Yankees do in this panic? Do you know that if the Yankees lose today, they actually are not in a wild card spot because the Rangers are going to pass them if the Yankees get swept? The Red Sox don't seem to lose. Toronto maintains its lead. But the Yankees, it's not like they're even chasing Toronto anymore, which is what we were talking about in this show only a week ago. Then we segued to they're chasing the Red Sox. Now, if they lose tonight, we have to segue to, stay calm, Nick, we have to segue to the Yankees are chasing the Rangers. Yikes. Nothing personal pick of the day. Nothing personal pick of the day. You got to feel good when you have a pick that's going into extra innings. You're feeling like, all right, we got this. And then you give up a 5 spot? Come on. The Diamondbacks, we had the Diamondbacks plus money. Everything was going great. And a 5 spot to the Padres. We're down to 103.99. Our cushion is getting smaller. Panic is setting in, but we will not stop. Because we still are 103.99. Interesting game today. Did you watch the Nationals Athletics last night? I'm not sure if you did. But Mackenzie Gore, do you remember that name? The guy traded from the Padres to the Nationals for Juan Soto. The guy who's been an all-star, part of the crazy thing where the Nationals got this great trade. James Wood, the all-star home run derby guy. Coca, correct me if I'm wrong. Has James Wood gotten a hit since the all-star derby? Forget a home run. Has the guy gotten a hit? Mackenzie Gore has had some struggles. His last 2 starts have been mediocre with a capital M. He's given up 14 earned runs in his last 2 games, and he really had a struggle last night. He went 3 runs against the Aths. 3 innings, gave up 8 runs. But I feel like there's a bounce back coming. I mean, it's the Aths for crying out loud. Mark Kotsay is manager of the year is a distant memory. I can't even think about it. We're going to take the Nationals plus 108 at home versus the Aths. That will be the nothing personal pick of the day. I want to end the show by talking a little bit about Pablo Torre and an announcement that came out yesterday. We were able to touch on it on Dan's show just a bit, but I wanted to make sure that people understood. Pablo Torre has a show called Pablo Torre Finds Out. You may see me there when I do the sporting class with John Skipper and Pablo. That's part of Pablo Torre Finds Out. Or you may see me when I just appear with Dominique Foxworth or appear with just Pablo. He is a fellow Meadowlarker, as am I, and we do these shows together. What you read yesterday is that Pablo Torre Finds Out has been licensed to The Athletic in what was reported as a 7-figure license deal. The interesting thing about Pablo Torre Finds Out is that what people are saying about it is that, wow, there's an opportunity here for actual journalism. Because the thought is that no one else in the world today, where shows like what Bob Costas used to do, or the sports reporters, or shows where there were journalists doing journalism, where there were actual investigative pieces that would end with well-produced pre, during, and post-produced shows, where have they gone? Well, they've gone the way of the typewriter. And the reason they've gone that way is not for anything other than they were not efficient anymore. They were too costly. Does it remind you when I'm talking about like the Tonight Show or the Late Show, where things get canceled? The reason why linear TV has been canceling shows like this and not renewing other things, whether it's cable networks or the regular over-the-air networks, is there was no way to make it profitable. What Pablo Torre is doing is something that many of us are doing, in that we are video and audio podcasts, which means that there's listeners who get it through an RSS feed where you're downloading and listening to the show, but there's also viewers. There's viewers on YouTube. There's viewers on social media, Instagram, TikTok. How are you monetizing that? You're monetizing that by building your audience and then licensing your show to platforms. You're licensing shows that you own. You're getting paid to do the content, and you're doing it in a way that is TV ready, but you're doing it in a far more economical way. The importance of the Pablo Torre finds out deal with The Athletic. The Athletic came out and said it's very important to us. We're trying to build our subscriber base. We're trying to give a value proposition to those who subscribe to the Athletic podcast to show that we've got not just sports podcasts, but we've got another sort of general podcast that can be sports adjacent sometimes, it can be business adjacent sometimes, or it can just be entertaining all the time. It's all part of and ties into what we said at the beginning of the show of what companies in general are trying to do. And what in general they're trying to do is provide opportunities for you, the audience, to engage with content that you are willing to pay for, not just on an a la carte basis, but when it is aggregated to you in one channel or another, it's the desire to pay for that. Pablo Torre joining up with The Athletic and with the New York Times becomes critical, not just because of partnering with The Athletic and the New York Times, and that's amazingly, the relationship is incredibly symbiotic. But what it shows is that there's an opportunity in the marketplace when there's a show that's smart, when there's a show that's interesting, and it's a show that is produced like a podcast, audio and video, that there is a home for that in a way that will continue to incentivize other talents to attempt to create and do that which Pablo is doing. And in an industry where that those incentives have basically disappeared, it is always good when they bubble up again. And this deal with Pablo Torre and Meadowlark licensing PTFO to The Athletic is hopefully a sign of great things to come, not just for Pablo, not just for Meadowlark, but for the entire industry, where I don't want to believe, personally, that it's all about the lowest common denominator, that it's all about how we can give you the stupidest content ever, and that's all you care about. I want to believe that you like to laugh, but you like to learn. I like to believe that you're going to be interested in what we're doing on Nothing Personal, what he's doing on PTFO, where you get your silly, you get your talking points, you get an opportunity to be better. It's not just Meadowlark that's doing this. It's the NFL, it's MLB, it's Apple, it's Google, it's every company you can think of. Paramount, they are trying to not take you for granted. They're actually trying to make it better for you. Will it work? We're going to find out. Make sure you stay tuned for after the break. We got another show, and guess what? It's Wednesday. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It is Wednesday, August 6, 2025, and it is time for the second hour, which means it's So You Want to Talk to Samson.
You know what I want? I want to talk to Samson.
So You Want to Talk to Samson. I want to remind everyone what this is. Ever since June 2nd on Wednesdays, we do a second hour just with you. Samson is a character in a movie called Half Baked. Check it out. It's way better than Captain America Brave New World. And there's a character named Samson. And if you call 631-377-4869, now think about that number, 377-DPS, 4869. That's how we reset around here. 631-377-4869. Let's hear your voice. You may make the show. What do you think, Coca? Are we ready? Let's go. Voicemail number 1. What do we got?
Hi, David. I don't think Coco will recognize the voice, but surely you do. Nothing Personal's first listener. Listening to you speak about the Marlins-Yankee game you went to and seeing Jack McKeon made me think of a question. Your feelings about Jack reminded me of the feelings you had for Red Holzman when you were quite young. What are the most important things you've taken from your relationships with these two stellar men? By the way, with no recency bias, I lay claim to being your number one fan. And remember, supper will always be waiting, still hot.
Oi. Well, that was my mom. It's an open voicemail. My mom could always call me on my cell phone. I love the fact, and it is true. When Matthew Koch and I started Nothing Personal, we believe our first show may have had 1 download. And it was my mom who listens to every show and will give me a written summary of questions and comments on each show. Coca, you're included in that, of course. That is a great question, Mom. Thank you very much for calling the number. Red Holzman, for people who don't know, the coach of the Knicks, the world, if you're not a New Yorker and don't know Red Holzman, shame on you. If you're a New Yorker and you don't know the number 613, shame on me for not talking about it enough. Red Holzman with 613 career wins. That number is in the rafters at Madison Square Garden. Jack McKeon, World Series winning manager for the Florida Marlins. One of the great reasons why I get to forever be a World Series champion president. That's a good question, Mom. Thank you. And the dinner's still being hot. For those of you not paying attention, that's okay. But if you look at my left leg, you may see Max. Max is a character from a children's book, Where the Wild Things Are. And the last page of that book is, and it was still hot. I happen to have that tattooed on my leg along with a picture of Max. Why? Because I take great comfort in the possibility that you can still go home to your parent and say, wow, is supper still waiting for me? And is it really still hot? But I want to answer your question, and I will. What did I learn? I'm going to start with Red Holzman because he was one of my first mentors after my grandpa's. And he was coach of the Knicks. He let me inside his head. He talked to me about strategy, not just on the court, but off the court. He introduced me to his wife, Selma, who taught me how to score games, how to score a basketball game. He taught me what it is to let things play out versus knowing when to intercede. You see, when you are a coach of a team or an executive of a team or you're in a relationship or you're doing anything during the course of a day, one of the great life lessons is, what do I do right now? Do I say something? When I see something, do I automatically say something? That's become a very interesting expression that Red Holzman would be very fascinated to discuss today, were he still alive. The object is, when you see something that looks out of place, you say something. It should not be interpreted as in a normal situation. When you see something, you don't always say something. I violate that too much for Red's taste, where if I see something that is a little quirky, a little strange, I ask about it. I say something because I'm curious. I want to understand why you doing what you're doing, why you saying what you're saying. What's your thought process? Is it the same as mine? Is it the same conclusion that I have, which is why it's the same action? What's necessary to put in my input in order to make a good decision? Red Holzman was really good at that. Red Holzman was really good at taking information, processing it, and then making a decision, and sometimes the decision was nothing, meaning he wouldn't say a word to his players. He wouldn't say a word. He would just let it play. Very often we watch an NBA game and we look at a run and we yell, timeout, timeout, trying to stop a run, stop momentum. Very often when after the opponent scores, you see a coach run onto the court, flashing the timeout sign. Red Holzman wasn't like that. Red Holzman was more contemplative as he thought about, well, wait a minute, this may be an opportunity for the players to understand that the momentum changes according to the last possession. The momentum changes according to the next play that I will call and that they will run that will result in a basket. Red Holzman used basketball as a metaphor for life and taught me to do the same. He taught me to look at a situation, analyze it, and then decide how to act when sometimes not acting is the action required. Jack McKeon was a little different. Jack McKeon was one of those managers who had been around many blocks, and I was a young executive. When Jack McKeon was hired, I was 35 years old. I had been in baseball for 3 seasons, and I felt like, well, I had a good base of understanding here, but Jack McKeon had a career of understanding, had a career of experience. And I had already done it wrong with Felipe Alou, who had a career of experience, Jeff Torborg, who had a career of experience. And the lesson I learned from Jack McKeon was, I'm going to tell you a few things, David. You have to tell me why you believe that I should be doing the following thing with a player or with something happening on the field or something happening off the field, and you have the burden of proof. My view was always that the manager had the burden of proof when I was a young executive, because whatever I came up with, that's what I thought would be the best course of action. What Jack convinced me of is that actually mine was the burden. I had to talk to Jack about things that I felt were necessary and important, and then I would have to try to change him if he disagreed. What a fascinating slight shift in analysis, isn't it? When you're at your own work or when you're in your own relationship, when you think about who's got the burden here to actually prove their side. Am I here just to listen, or am I here to advocate? Jack McKeon taught me that I have to be here to advocate, and I've got to be convincing. And when I'm not, I have to understand that it is on to the next. That was never more evident than as we were boarding the plane to fly to New York before Game 6 of the World Series, when I said to Jack that Josh Beckett should not pitch on short rest. He should be pitching Game 7. And Jack McKeon said, why? Explain to me your reasoning. And I said, because the risk on short rest is that if we lose that game, then we don't have Beckett for Game 7. And having him for Game 7 gives us an advantage over the Yankees. And Jack said, you're forgetting to think about Yankee Stadium in a Game 7 situation. Why is it that you think that we would have the advantage in that? When we have 2 chances to win 1, why not try to win game right now? He's 23 years old. Short rest. Give me a break. You're simply advocating for what is normal in baseball, that pitchers need 4 days rest. We've shown you, Jack said, throughout these playoffs, we'll pitch Josh Beckett every 2 days. He'll start Game 5 against the Cubs and come back and pitch multiple innings in Game 7. You didn't advocate, you didn't convince me, and guess what? Josh Beckett pitched Game 6, and the rest is history. I appreciate that lesson that Jack McKeon gave, and I appreciate that you called in. Mom, I appreciate your time. I appreciate that you raised me and took the time to have me. That seems super nice. Thank you for that call. That was a surprise, Coca. What do you got next?
Hi, David. Love the show. Tom from Chicago. Is there a limit on what a team can trade a player for cash? Meaning, could the Pirates trade Paul Skenes for like $120 million? So it's like a transfer fee in the European League? Regardless of that answer, how is cash considerations treated for each team's salary cap when there's such a trade? Thanks. Love the show.
Well, thank you, Tom from Chicago. You just struck quite a nerve with me. What's the name of the player, Coca, that just came out yesterday where it will be the largest transfer fee in Major League Soccer? And I believe he's a former Tottenham guy. Is he one of your favorite players, Coca? And what was the amount of money? $25 million or something? What an unbelievable bit of business that I always wanted to be a part of. Speaking of Jack McKeon worked for an owner called Charles Finley back when Jack was managing the A's, back when they were the Oakland A's and not the Aths. Charlie Finley did something, I want to say in the 70s, Coca, where Charlie Finley got in the business of selling players. Major League Baseball did not like that, and Major League Baseball changed the rules after that. Rules that exist to this day. That any time there's an exchange of more than $1 million in any trade for a player, the commissioner has to approve that trade himself. And I don't mean calling the deputy commissioner. I don't mean calling the head of labor. I don't mean calling the head of baseball operations. I mean the commissioner gets on the phone with you and says, I approve or I don't approve. My question always was, why? Why can't I, if I have Paul Skenes and I've got money issues where I've got debt that I want to pay down because I want to open up payroll for the next player, because there's always a next player. I tried to convince Bud Selig, and after Bud Selig, Rob Manfred. How is it that you are going to penalize my greatest way to equality? My greatest way to equality is to get a talent, to add value to that talent, and then to monetize that talent. And you may say, David, you sound diabolical. These are human beings you're talking about. That's true, but they're the product. The equivalent, I used to say, is how is it that I could find a company, invest in the company, the stock goes way up, and all of a sudden I'm told I can't sell. And I don't mean because I'm an officer where it's restricted stock, where the value of the stock comes because of something that I did and it's a public company and we can't have that sort of nefarious activity without disclosures. I'm talking about you being just a normal shareholder where you add value only because you're there and you bought a stock. Now, you could argue that when I identify a pitcher or I'm part of an organization that does, or a position player, and I identify that position player at a low level, at a young age, at a low value, and then all of a sudden that player becomes significantly greater, I don't see the problem. Japanese players are posted to Major League Baseball all the time. There are rules in place for how much money the team can get, how much money the player can get. The union's argument is, hold on, if the Marlins got, or the Pirates get $120 million for Paul Skenes, then the Yankees, whoever is paying the Pirates, won't have enough money to pay Paul Skenes. Well, I've got another suggestion when it comes to these transfer fees. Why is it that you can't have a deal with the player and the team? My view is that if you can get a deal together where you have a player and you can sell that player to another team, where that player gets a contract that that player deserves, but the team also gets a sum of money, that should be allowed. Why would a big market team pay over market for a player? Because they do it all the time. And if part of the payment not just goes to the player but goes to the team as well, the commissioner should like that. It's another form of revenue sharing. It's another way to make things equal. And don't give me the argument that it can't be equal if Paul Skenes is on a big market team. It can't be a good league where a small market team doesn't have the ability to keep this superstar or that superstar. We've actually discussed this, including yesterday. And I've always told you there's always the next player. Falling in love in the front of the jersey, that's what makes the most sense, not the back of the jersey. If you have a situation where you can lessen the financial gap between two teams, 2 franchises in your league, and you can do it with a reallocation of assets, why wouldn't you? I am passionate about it because I've spoken to people on both sides. I've been on one side. I can't tell you I've been on the Yankees side, but I sure as heck fire can tell you I've been on the Pirates side. And when I tell you what I could do with $120 million to make our team in a totally different financial position, not just over this year, but over the next 5 years, and what it would mean to our team, not just to have the payroll capacity, but to have the debt capacity, what it would mean to have your capital expense fund actually full of money, meaning that you can improve your stadium. You can do things that help the fans give you more money to improve your revenue. Anything that you can do to become healthier, you should be allowed to do. The whole purpose of having assets is to increase their value. You really, really hit a nerve there. I do appreciate asking the question, but I'll tell you that, in my opinion, that rule is not going to change because I've never been able, and no one's been able to convince the commissioner or the union that Charlie Finley's actions by selling players, it will do nothing but increase the gap between the haves and the have-nots. No one's been convinced of it the other way. I will keep trying. I promise you. Coca, do we have someone else?
Hey, David, this is Jake from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I had a quick question about service time manipulation, quote unquote. My beloved Baltimore Orioles have a couple of pretty well-performing prospects in Norfolk right now at the AAA level, including Samuel Basayo, who's one of the top prospects in the game of sport. And fans are clamoring as to why they're not on the Major League roster at this point in time. Now, there's a few of us who understand that, hey, if they wait till later in August, that means that they retain their rookie status for next year, giving the team an extra year with the players, so on and so forth. And for a small market team like the Orioles, to me, it all makes sense. You know, it's heartbreaking to some fans to hear that, but to me, it's just don't hate the player, hate the game, change the CBA. Can you kind of explain, what's the difference between, keeping the player down or whatever, it's smart business, and then when it goes over the line, if there is a line where the union now has the ability to push a grievance? I appreciate it, man. Love the show. Talk to you later.
That was more than 30 seconds, but thank you for the question, because how can we resist a service time manipulation question? It's one of our tried and true concepts here at Nothing Personal. I don't love the word. I was trying to think of, when this question came in, what would be a synonym for service time manipulation? Because doesn't manipulation definitionally become pejorative? No one likes to be manipulated. I mean, I guess that there are pockets of people who go to various places where generally you walk down a flight of stairs and then you don't mind being manipulated. But when it comes to business, you certainly don't want that feeling. When it comes to a union management relationship, you don't want the feeling that there's any manipulation going on. I've got a surprise for you, and I love that you're at Fort Bragg. Loved playing there. My surprise to you is that the service time manipulation in the game has decreased significantly because of the CBA and the rules that are in the CBA of how young players get service time, and how you can call someone up in August and they can end up with a full year of service time. Or the fact of the matter is that players are getting access to this fund of money that gets paid to pre-arbitration players, and that also helps these players make more money faster. The goal of the union was to get young players paid faster because generally players do not even make it to arbitration. So the service time manipulation that we do is far less important in terms of the total number of players in the union. The far more important issue is, how do we get money to these first-year players the most we can? Because the odds of them becoming second-year players, not good. But how do we get them the most we can? Because the odds of them becoming third-year players, not good. So all of these rule changes took place in order to try to incentivize teams to call up young players, where you get a benefit like a draft pick if you have a player on your opening day roster, if that player is one of the top young players in the game. Or you have the ability where if you delay a player in order to delay arbitration or delay free agency, that can be taken away from you if the player performs. So if you have a good player, you might as well just bring him up and let him play. But I spent plenty of time trying to explain to you that what teams were doing when they called up, and I have not followed this, Coca, at all, but Castiglione with the Royals, and you had Anthony with the Red Sox. I have not followed, and I don't remember exactly how they've done since their call-ups. Obviously, the Red Sox have played great. The Royals have not. The Royals are on the periphery at best of the playoff race. The Red Sox have now become almost in control of their own destiny. But the reality is, when Baltimore is looking at its team, and you said something that interested me, you said that you call them a small market team. The Orioles didn't used to be that. They are now a low payroll team. They are now a low revenue team. When Camden Yards first opened, and now it's a long time ago, they were a behemoth actually in Major League Baseball. But the fact of the matter is Roman Anthony really hitting .348 over his past month? Okay. That's not too shaggy. That's pretty good, Coca. But anyway, back to service time manipulation. When you have the understanding with your team that you're looking at this year's payroll and next year's payroll, and then the year after and the year after, and you're figuring out who's going to be on your team and who's not, the Orioles are not looking at their Norfolk team right now and saying, hey, if we bring these guys up, we have a chance to actually make a difference this season. Those decisions would have been made 2 months ago when they fired the manager, and there was an opportunity to turn the season around. The Orioles' season is not being turned around. They are far more focused solely, and you saw it with the deadline. You just see generally how they are and how you should be with their record. You're looking at spring training of 26. So when you are looking solely at spring training, you do the following things. You calculate who is going to get the remaining at-bats and the remaining innings of your season. You look at who's under contract over the coming years. You look at the number of pitches that certain young pitchers have thrown. You look at the number of at-bats that young players have gotten. You try to get young players more at-bats who are on your team. You try to get experienced players fewer at-bats because if they're signed long-term, you don't want them to get hurt and you don't want them to actually waste bullets. Same with pitchers. So what I'm interested in is what the Orioles are doing on the big league level, because at the minor league level, you let it be. There's something in baseball called September call-ups. It used to be a thing where you call up all of your young studs and you let them be there in September to feel the big league vibe and to take a big league trip and to play from time to time, pinch hit off the bench. You had a crowded dugout, a crowded clubhouse. Those days are past. There's a cap on the September roster. Why did owners ask for a cap in the CBA? To save owners from themselves. A concept that we talk about consistently on this show, that many of the guardrails in the CBA are meant to save owners from themselves. It's the ultimate irony. September call-ups are the same, where owners are just, all right, we'll call this guy, we'll call this guy, we'll call this guy, we'll give him service time. You get service time, you get service time, you get meal money, you get the per diem. Not anymore, they changed it. So, what I think is happening with Baltimore is they're acting very typically of a team that's out of the race. They're acting very typically of a team that is in the lower end of payroll and revenue, and they're acting entirely appropriately. And it has nothing to do with their lack of having a good team. It's about their lack of competitiveness this year only. So don't look at your Norfolk team and get despondent because they're up, they're not up, and what does it mean about what the new owner and what the GM are doing, because that correlation is not there. Before we do another voicemail, I wanted to answer a question that I got, because we still do take questions. We like the voicemails because we like having your voice on the show. I think that's cool when you hear your own voice on the show. I mean, we think it's cool because we think that then more of you will listen or submit questions because you want to hear yourself on the show. Then don't leave a 4-minute message. But You can still DM me at David P. Samson. You can still send me an email on davidsamsonpodcast.com, which is the website where we have merch and past episodes and current episodes and documents that show everything we're talking about. This one came in as a question that was written, Coca, and I know that is not exactly what we want to do on Wednesdays, but this one was too good. David, please tell me that you will not let one day pass without discussing the statement made by the Philadelphia Phillies steroid-taking closer Alvarado. I know you'll do it. I mean, when people know me, Coca, it makes me smile. When people know what I like to talk about, the reason I'm giving you that attention, and thank you, Mark, I appreciate, I really do. The reason I'm doing that is that that's a topic that has to be covered, 100%. Do you remember Jose Alvarado? It's a while ago. We touched on it at the deadline when the Phillies traded for the Twins closer and said, reminder, the Phillies don't have a closer. Reminder, the Phillies used to have a really good closer. His name is Jose Alvarado. Reminder, about 80 games ago, he got suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. Well, he's back now, and his statement was a doozy. May 18th was a very difficult day for me. That day, MLB announced the positive result of a doping test conducted in March 2025. That's spring training. Yes, you do have to go pee-pee in spring training. You are tested. That's me talking. Back to the statement. I am fully aware that using prohibited substances is wrong, and I would never intend to do so because I have always had great respect for the game, my organization, my teammates, and the fans, all of whom I want to offer my sincere apologies. Wait, was it a false positive? What happened here? Was it a diuretic? Stomachache? What do we got? Well, let's read the next paragraph. I made a mistake, and therefore I have faced the consequences set forth by MLB. Going forward, my focus is on working hard to help the team win. What does it mean you made a mistake? You mean you made a mistake by taking something without reading the label? Or do you mean you made a mistake by taking something that you knew for sure was a banned substance, but you forgot you get tested during spring training? Or you thought that it would be out of your system fast enough, therefore you wouldn't test positive. There's a lot of people who do that. A lot of people get drug tested at their job and they say, Coke? No worry, that's out of your system in 24 hours. You can do cocaine anytime you want. Just make sure you don't go pee-pee on the day you do coke. Guess what? Doesn't always work. Is it possible that marijuana is in your system for 46 days, or is it 62 days? The answer is, it matters. You got to pay attention if you're being tested for that. You got to learn what's in your system, what's not. When you are a baseball player, you know very well that you are going to be randomly tested. You know exactly what you are putting in your body. It is extremely frustrating to me when players test positive and then pretend, oh, sorry, didn't know, didn't realize, my bad. I've been in clubhouses where players won't eat a hamburger because they want a special kind of lettuce and a special kind of onion and a special kind of sauce. I've been in clubhouses where players are measuring every calorie, every inch of what they're doing. The body, forget a temple. The body is what they use to make a living. Now, don't get me wrong. There are players who like donuts. I'm in. Pop'ems, fine, good. Pizza, all right. Chick-fil-A, heck yeah, but not on Sunday. But you're telling me when you're putting a substance in your body with a needle, or you're putting a substance in your body through a pill or a cream, that you don't know what that is? We have a very simple rule with our players. Before you do anything, come to us. We will tell you if it's kosher or not. We will tell you if you're at risk or not. Because what we can't tell you is when the Grim Reaper with the cup is going to come into your dugout and say, come with me right now. and then all you get to do is be suspended for 80 games, not be eligible for the postseason, make us have to trade for a closer, and on top of that, not have depth because you made a mistake? I am not entirely forgiving of these types of mistakes. This is not like, oh, I forgot to cover second base. Oh, I forgot how many outs there were. Oh, I threw to the wrong base. Oh, I didn't realize that I was up. I forgot where we were in the batting order. Oh, I was in the bathroom. Sorry, I'm late. Oh, the team bus was at 7:10. Thought it was at 7:15. All right, not excusable, not happy, but give me a small break. I made a mistake. It kept going. This is one of my favorites. I thank God for giving me the strength to overcome this situation. I'm glad to be back and ready to support the team. Well, I'm glad you thank God. And it's not that this is not personal. I don't know Alvarado at all. I'm just basing it on any player who's suspended for steroids and then starts apologizing, trying to make it right to the community, to the teammates, to the fan base, to the front office, to the manager, then to God. I'm very glad that God has time in this world where many, many bad things happen every second. I'm going to pay attention to a God that is paying attention to the needles that I'm putting in my tuchus. You got me, Mark. Okay. How about another voicemail?
Hey, David. There's an article that came out recently about an NHL team dominating youth sports in their area. I was curious to know if there are any examples of that in other major sports leagues and what the Marlins ever did with youth sports as well. Thanks.
Youth sports. Thank you for that question. I know people who work over there with Dallas, so I want to be very careful here because I know they listen to this show. But I want to just get this straight. Are you saying, Coca, is that what this caller is saying right now? That the Dallas Stars now own ice rinks, which is good because you're trying to promote youth hockey, because when you've got youth hockey, that means players are either going to become professionals or they're going to become fans and ticket buyers. That is why you get soccer academies. That's why Major League Baseball does playball.org. That is why there's Little League involvement, and you just are trying to fill your pipeline with customers. Yes, normal, need it. But did I just hear that what the Dallas Stars are being accused of is actually taking those rinks, taking what they're doing in the community, and then trying to bilk the community and make the rinks way too expensive by jacking up the prices? Have they been accused of bullying local associations and increasing prices of ice time and making just things generally harder on everyone? Is that what I heard? We all know that youth hockey is hugely expensive. Who amongst us has not been to a hockey rink at 2 a.m. because that's the best way you could get ice time and the cheapest? I certainly was. In high school, we would play hockey and have fun doing it. And yes, it would be the middle of the night because that's all we could afford. We'd get there and then afterwards go to Mickey D's. I've got to give the Dallas Stars credit here, because if that's a business plan, that, hey, we're going to improve youth hockey, we're going to get ownership in all the rinks, and then we're going to make it exclusive and we're going to make it costly. What do I think is actually happening? What I think is actually happening is the Dallas Stars are onto something, and they're onto something smart, which is what people are trying to do, and this is companies, including many of your companies. You're trying to buy a concept all the way from start to finish, meaning you're trying to cut out as many middlemen as possible. If you're trying to get more people to play youth hockey, you can do equipment drives, you can do equipment giveaways, you can own equipment companies, you can provide equipment, you can sell equipment, you can have websites, you can have leagues, but what's the next step of that? You have to have places for the leagues to play. Therefore, wouldn't it be great, instead of renting rink time as a league, you own the rink, so you're then paying yourself, charging yourself, and all of a sudden you're controlling the supply chain. And if you can control the supply chain and the demand chain, woohoo! You know what that's called? That's called regulatory approval problems. That's called a monopoly. You really shan't be able to control every part of everything, but youth hockey, you think someone's going to get in the way of that? That is 1-0 Dallas Stars or any other team that is able to take over the chain that deeply. Now, do I think it's nice? Do I think it's fair? Do I think it's happening? I'm not positive. But what I do know is the opportunity for financial manipulation, the opportunity for abuse, I'm talking financial, obviously, the opportunity for margin creation, that's done when you own a bigger piece of the pie that goes from A to Z. Why do you think content companies not only want to own content, produce content, but they want to have the talent who's doing the content? They want to have in-house production. When you outsource things, you are having to give margin to the company that you're outsourcing to, which increases the price of the underlying job. If you could yourself do something, you get to allocate your overhead over a greater number of things. If you've got 2 employees for the Dallas Stars who are in charge of youth community initiatives, and you're trying to fill the pipeline and you're trying to help kids because you're trying to bolster your PR and all the different things you're trying to do, it is way smarter to be able to do it with rinks. So, the article that came out, I admit it, haven't seen it. If it is true that they are doing this, it doesn't make me happy. I understand why they think they can do it, because everyone will charge you as much as they can until you stop paying for it. Do you think that the charge for the rink would continue to go up if the rinks were empty? Now, you may say that's elitism and that's only the rich people can play hockey, and now that's terrible. You're going to have rich white people only playing hockey. It can't be that's what we want. Well, I got to tell you, when you are an organization trying to figure out how to make money and how to fill your pipeline, you're far less interested in demographics. Now, me, on the other hand, I was in Miami. When you're in Miami and you know that your demographic is Cuban, your demographic is Latin, and you have no choice but to, and you want to, and I'll explain why. We loved refurbishing fields. We loved being involved in little leagues in South Florida. We loved sending players. We loved sending Bidley the Marlin. We loved sending money, support, all the things to little leagues in South Florida, because what we felt is we weren't sure about where we were drawing from because we had no good attendance, whether it's from Miami or Broward or Palm Beach. But we were sure of one thing, that to be a good community partner, we had to, and it was critical, show the public that we were willing to do all of these things. Why? Did we think that they'd grow up to be big leaguers? What are the odds? Did we think they'd grow up to be season ticket holders? We hope so, but given our attendance, what were the odds? The reason why we had to do these things, and I enjoyed it, I loved what we did in the community. We did amazing things in the community with amazing people. But when you ask us to spend money, which we did to build fields, to maintain fields, and we gave you the public word, which was, hey, we are doing this out of the goodness of our heart, there was another side to it. And I didn't talk about it back then, but I can talk about it now. The other side to that is that we were trying to get public money for a ballpark. And we had to agree as part of that ballpark deal to get public money that we would build and refurbish more fields. That's actually in our deal. That each year, the Marlins, for 38 years of the lease, each year, the Marlins will refurbish a field in a different district in Miami-Dade. Was I happy to agree to that? Yeah. Were we going to do it anyway? Yeah. But did we have to say at the bargaining table that we weren't going to do it in order to get something in return for doing it? Yes. That's just the business side of it. But it doesn't mean that we charge the public 2 times the cost when we refurbish a field. It doesn't mean that we charge the Little League 2 times the cost to play on that field. So I'm not buying into what Dallas did. I don't know that it's true, because we would never do that. As much as we needed to do things to get public money and to be looked at as a good community partner, there is no chance that we would have done something that would have been so easily discovered, that would have made us look so bad when the object was to look good. even I wouldn't have gotten in the way of that positive PR by doing something that insane. How about another voicemail, Coca?
Hey, David, this is Ray from Chattanooga. Please explain to me how the revenue sharing works in Major League Baseball, if any. And please tell me what other business that you know of that the employees are entitled to share X percentage of the revenues of any business. That's not a very good business model. Thank you.
Did we put this in because of everything that's gone on with Steph Curry and all of the blowback? That's a funny question. Just FYI for everybody, and I'll always admit it to you. I told you when my mother was calling. I don't know this caller. I don't know the person. I did not ask this person to ask that question. Instead of explaining what revenue sharing is, which of course I'm happy to explain, you take every revenue from every team. You take ticket revenue, you take food revenue, beverage, merchandise, parking, TV revenue, and you put it all in a big pot. And so you have 30 teams who put all this money together, and you put all of your revenue in there. Then there's a percentage of that revenue that gets split amongst teams. There are revenue sharing payors and revenue sharing payees, meaning there are teams that have enough revenue that they give some of theirs away, and there's teams that don't have enough revenue that they need to take from the community pot. There is a list of rules the size of, 4 inches that goes through what revenue counts for revenue sharing, how revenue sharing is calculated, how revenue sharing is distributed, and it's all collectively bargained. That's a little known fact that you may not have known. That in order for this to happen, this revenue sharing between teams, that is part of what's in the CBA, how the revenue sharing will be calculated, how much will be distributed, and how teams who get and give will be treated in various other ways. So, for example, if you're a revenue sharing payor, there is something in the CBA that says, hey, if you're a large market, you're given revenue sharing and you stink, we're not going to let you have a high draft pick multiple years in a row because we don't want to promote tanking, because we need you spending money because you're one of the teams that can, and you got to spend money for the people in our union. So there's a ton of different rules like that. But the second part of your question really interests me greatly, and that is it a good business model for the employees to share in the revenue? Because I assume you're referring to baseball players who in theory get between 47 and 52% of revenue, at least the revenue that we declare, knowing that anything over 50% is an industry nightmare and leads to losses. Or in the NFL and NBA, when you have a tagged amount of revenue, we talked about early in the show, when teams increase revenue by $1, 50 cents go to the player, but the other 50 cents you get to keep, and you get a multiple of that revenue. So you remember that from hour 1 of this show. Employees getting revenue. Are you talking about when there is extra operating income and your company gives you a bonus? That's not the same as getting a percentage of revenue. Are you talking about when there is excess cash flow and that gets into basically computed into your share price, and you have an employee stock ownership plan where you get options or you get actual shares of stock, and then you take revenue, you take profit, and that increases the value of the underlying shares, which increases your net worth and the amount of, in theory, money that you get? Or do you mean the revenue sharing that goes to people in the C-suite, where they get announced that they've made $2.7 million in base compensation and $42 million in stock compensation? That stock could be restricted stock, which they have to hold for 4 years. It could be stock that vests over the course of 3 years or 5 years, but it is calculated as though that entire amount of stock will vest at the current price. Which part of revenue sharing to employees are you talking about, and whether or not it makes sense to share? My view is we are sharing. That's how you get paid. When you've got a salary of $50,000 or $75,000 or $100,000, where's that coming from? That's coming from net gross revenue. Which is it? Well, it depends on the company. For the Marlins, it was pretty Obvious. When you have a team that has expenses, we'd count payroll. We would count other people's expenses, meaning the head of marketing, the head of sales, just a person in accounting. That is all part of the cost of running our business. We take all the revenue we have, then we pay everybody who earns a salary for getting us that revenue, and then we pay all the other expenses in order to actually produce that revenue. And then if we have anything left over, we get to pay down some debt. Except most of the years you have nothing left over. What companies do, whether you're a widget company, a ladder company, a baseball company, it doesn't even matter. What you do is you figure out what is the cost of doing what I do. What I do is I produce ladders. What does it cost per ladder? Well, you count up the cost of every employee that's needed to make the ladder, then the employee who's needed to sell the ladder, and then the employee who's needed to distribute the ladder. You add that all up, you divide by the number of ladders made per year, and that is your cost of goods. And you try to make it so your cost of goods is less than the amount someone pays you for the goods. That's called the math of it. That's called the profit. So I'm good with revenue sharing to employees as long as the company is still profitable. That's a fun question. Thank you. I want to end the show. This So You Want to Talk to Samson. There were a bunch of questions here on this, and I'm going to do an amalgam just for purposes of time here. A bunch of you asked us both on voicemail at 631-377-4869 and in writing, is what's the WNBA going to do about all these projectiles? And you heard me talk about it both here and on the Le Batard show. People are throwing dildos on the court, and they're not stopping. What is it that the NBA can do? Last night during the Fever Sparks game, there was another one thrown on the court. We make an announcement before every game. Do not throw anything on the field. If you do, you will be ejected and you will be prosecuted and you'll be put in stadium jail. Well, it's not working. So you know what's going to happen? Is that these morons who are throwing stuff on the court are going to ruin it the way the shoe bomber and the candy bomber ruined it at TSA. While it is true that the rules have just now changed that you can keep your shoes on, we had to take our shoes off for years because of one guy. Guess what? If you have to wait online and get to a game an hour earlier, and we have to increase our expenses to give everyone a pat down to check for dildos, we're taking that money and we're increasing our ticket prices and we're lowering our cost of goods sold by lowering our payroll and lowering the amount of money going to players. Don't care. You are going to force us to make us open the gates early and to make you wait longer. Because there's no way the WNBA can keep putting up with this, and there's no way as a baseball team or a basketball team, no one can put up with this. You are putting people's lives in danger. That sounds crazy. Can you die from a dildo? Well, I guess it depends on the size and speed. The reality is that it doesn't matter whether it's a dildo or a penny or a feather or a bat or a popcorn kernel. What matters is the concept that for whatever reason you all feel, and I don't mean to say you all, forgive me, I don't mean every one of you. But the fact is there are enough people who think it's okay to do that. I'm happy for you to heckle. I'm happy for you to be emotional and passionate. And if you want all the keyboard courage you want to call me whatever names you want and the players, whatever you want to do, don't threaten. Don't you threaten. But if you want to talk about how bad the performance is, good, great, fine. You can debate the Caitlin Clark effect all you want, come out on whatever side you want. And you want to be a misogynist and a sexist and a general POC, POS, fine. Do it on your own time and try not to spread it to your children. But when you do something that gets in the way of what everyone else is trying to do, watch a game, enjoy a game, and get into a place on time in a timely fashion without being violated, and you're screwing with that, I got a problem. The only thing that's going to happen with all of these objects being thrown on the court is a bigger inconvenience to the 99% of the people who are there in the right way, in the mature way, actually watching a game. You want to talk about what just business is? Adding cost. It's just business. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for your questions. This is nothing personal.